Hey, what's up, guys? We're talking about factoring trinomials, two different methods, area model and grouping. This video will focus on the grouping method. If you want to see the area model, go check out that video. Both methods start the exact same way. So we're looking, is there a greatest common factor for all three terms? Remember, trinomial means three terms. Okay, so we look for a greatest common factor for all three terms. If there's one other than one, we're going to pull that out. We'll write the remaining trinomial, and then we use that for our product sum puzzle. So they both start the same way. After you do the product sum puzzle, then you decide which method you want to do. Grouping, we're going to use that to split our middle term, and then we're going to group the first terms and the last two terms, and we factor a GCF out of there, and it's just factor, 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 kind of with the grouping method. Okay, so here it goes. Let's look grouping method, factoring trinomials. So 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. First thing I look for is the greatest common factor. So I know there's no variable because the last number is a constant, so they don't have a variable in common. 3, 7, and 2, the largest number they can all be divided by is 1. Remember, if you struggle with GCF, you can go into Desmos and use that as a tool to help you find the GCF. Okay. All right, so we already know that it's 1. All right, so then we go to the product sum. So we're going to use the product sum puzzle. So let's set that up. I multiply the squared coefficient times the constant, so 3 times 2 is 6. The sum is always the middle term, so positive 7. And so I'm looking for what multiplies to 6 but adds to 7. Start with 1 times 6. That's 6. If I add those together, hey, that's 7. I love when it first gives it to me right away. Okay, so I'm going to use that to split up the 7x. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite everything. I'm going to have 3x squared. Now I'm going to split 7x into 1x and 6x. So I'm going to have plus 1x plus 6x. And I could do that in either order. It doesn't matter. Okay, I could have done plus 6x plus 1x and then plus 2. All right, at this point, we're going to split it into two groups, the first two and the last two. I'm going to use whatever that symbol is. I'm going to use that, just bring it down. Okay, and you'll see when we have negatives that kind of helps us out. All right, so 3x squared plus 1x. I'm looking for the GCF of those. Well, 3 and 1, their largest one is 1. And then x squared and x, oh, they both share an x, so it's 1x. Okay, I'm going to look at the second one, GCF 6x and 2. Okay, they don't have an x in common, but 6 and 2 can both be divided by 2. Again, you could use Desmos to help you figure that out. Okay, you have to know how to do the variable part, but Desmos can help you with numbers. All right, so what this means, I'm going to pull 1x out of the first one. I don't have to write the one. I could if it helps me visually. Okay, x times what is 3x squared? Well, x times 3x. X times what is 1x? Positive 1. Right, so remember this should multiply back up to what I just did. I'm factoring it out. Okay, I'm going to keep the positive here. 2 comes out. So 2 times what is going to give me back to 6x plus 2. 2 times 3x will give me 6x. 2 times positive 1 will get me back to positive 2. All right, so cool. So we factor, we use the product sum, we split the middle term, group the first two, group the last two, find the product, find the greatest common factor, factor it out. All right, look at our parentheses. I have 3x plus 1, I have 3x plus 1. I have x and 2 are both being multiplied by the same thing. That's a greatest common factor for x and 2. So I can pull 3x plus 1 to the front. And then I'm going to see, well, what remains when I pull those out? What remains is x plus 2. That creates my second factor. Okay, so that would be my factored form, 3x plus 1 times x plus 2. Remember, you could rewrite that in any order, so it could be x plus 2 times 3x plus 1. You just can't mix up what's inside the parentheses, but you can switch the order of the parentheses. All right, so that's the grouping method. If you're good at like seeing those greatest common factors, it's like, okay, greatest common factor, done. All right, so here we go. Let's look at it again. We have 9p squared minus 24p plus 12. First thing I'm looking for is the greatest common factor of those three terms. I know all three of those can be divided by 3. So I pull the 3 out and I write what remains. So 3 times 3p squared would give me back to 9p squared. 3 times negative 8p would give me negative 24p. And 3 times positive 4 would get me back to the 12. Notice I have my signs attached because I should have a trinomial, so don't drop signs. Notice when I say positive 4, I wrote a plus 4, okay? If I were to multiply this back out, it should equal what I started with. That's the whole point of factoring, right? If I don't do the multiplication, I could say, oh, if I divide all of these by 3, what's left? Right, so just different ways to think through it. Once I'm here, I create my product sum. This 3 outside, its only job is to be outside when I finish, okay? That was my greatest common factor. We want to keep it outside when we do this. All right, I'm looking at the inside trinomial now. So 3 times 4 is going to be 12. That's my product. The sum is the middle term, so negative 8. Positive product, negative sum, that means these both have to be negative because to get a positive product, I have to have the same sign multiplied. All right, so I do negative 1 times negative 12. That's positive 12, but if I do negative 1 plus negative 12, that's going to be negative 13. That's not what I want, okay? So let's try the next one. If I do negative 2 times negative 6, that's positive 12. If I do negative 2 plus negative 6, that's going to be negative 8. Hey, that's what I want. It gives me both of them. So I have negative 2, negative 6. This is going to split the middle term, okay? Because negative 2p plus negative 6p equals negative 8. All right, so this GCF, I'm going to leave it out. I'm going to put it down here, and I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to rewrite my trinomial with the split middle term. So minus 2p minus 6p, and then plus the 4, okay? So all of my pieces still have to be represented. I don't want to change the value of my trinomial, okay? I could write these middle two terms. I could swap them. So it could go negative 6p minus 2p if I wanted, and we should get to the same result, okay? All right, so we're here. We're going to group the first two. We're going to group the second two. I'm going to keep that sign in the middle and bring it down, okay? All right, so GCF for 3p squared minus 2p. Well, 3 and 2, that's 1. And then p squared and p, oh, they share a p, okay? So that's going to be 1p. I look at the second group, 6p and 4. Those can both be divided by 2. So that's my greatest common factor. So I'm going to pull out. So 1p, and I'm just looking at these two terms, right? So that's what grouping is. I grouped terms together. So 1p times 3p would get me back to 3p squared. 1p times negative 2 would get me back to negative 2p. I'm going to bring down the negative. I have this 2 here, so 2 right there. Negative 2 times something equals negative 6p. So negative 2 times 3p is negative 6p. Negative 2 times something has to be positive 4, so that's going to be times negative 2. Okay? Here's a big clue. If I do this correctly, my parenthesis quantity should end up the same. That's the beauty of the grouping method. If it doesn't end up the same, probably needed to pull a negative sign out. Okay? All right, so now I know they're 1p and negative 2 are both multiplied by 3p minus 2. So that's my first parenthesis. And then what's left, right? What's left if I divided that out, I have 1p and negative 2, right? So then I have my factored form. 3, my original GCF, times 3p minus 2 times p minus 2. And remember, you could rewrite that. You might end up, depending on how you group your stuff, you might end up in that order. Those are exactly the same. Okay? So GCF, GCF, GCF. Let's do one more to soak in the process, right? All right, so first step, always look for a GCF of your 3 terms. All 3 of those can be divided by 2, okay? No variable because we have the constant without one, so they don't share a variable. So if I pull 2 out, what's left? Well, if I divide everything by 2, or you can ask yourself, what do I multiply by, right? 2 times 3m squared gets me back to 6m squared. 2 times positive 7m gets me back to 14m. And then 2 times negative 6 gets me negative 12. All right, we found the GCF, we pulled it out. The remaining trinomial, remember GCF now, its only job is to be at the front of my final answer. Okay, we're going to look at the new trinomial, create our product sum. So I have 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. Sum is positive 7. Negative product means I have to have opposite signs. Positive sum means that this has to be the larger one because I need more positives than negatives. All right, so I start with negative 1 times 18. That equals negative 18, which is what I want. If I add negative 1 plus 18, that's 17. That's not what I want, so it shouldn't be that pair. If I do negative 2 times 9 equals negative 18, sweet. Negative 2 plus 9 equals 7. Hey, that's what I wanted. So 9 and negative 2 are what's going to split up the middle term, okay? So that's what we're going to use to split up 7m. I bring down all the original stuff, so 3m squared, split 7m into positive 9m minus 2m. Remember, I could swap the order of those and still come out the same, minus 6. Okay, I'm going to group, because it's my grouping method, first and last 2. Keep that sign right there. Okay. All right, here we go. GCF of the first 2. Both 3 and 9 can be divided by 3. M squared and m share m. Okay. And my second one, 2m and negative 6 can both be divided by 2. All right, so let's pull out. Looking at my first 2 first, 3m times m gets me 3m squared. 3m times positive 3 is 9m minus 2, the GCF, times, well, negative 2 times m would get me back to negative 2m. Negative 2 times positive 3 gets me to negative 6. Okay. I'm here, I look at my parentheses, I have m plus 3 through multiplication, so that's a greatest common factor again, so m plus 3. And then what's left? 3m times negative 2. That's my other parentheses. Okay, so 2, my original GCF, 2 times m plus 3 times 3m minus 2 is my factored form. And again, just to repeat it, depending on how you group, your factors might be in different orders, but it tells us the same story. Okay, so that's factoring trinomials with the grouping method. Pull out a greatest common factor if you can. That stays out front. Use the product sum puzzle to split the middle term. Group the first 2, group the last 2. Greatest common factor, and your parentheses should match. And then your second parentheses is what were they multiplied by. So those outside the parentheses terms. All right, that's it.